everyone. Thank you so much for joining today's webinar. My name is Yari Negri, and I'll go ahead and kick things off. Today's webinar is going to focus around how to make SharePoint work from you, and we're going to talk about adoption strategies from the field. A little bit of webinar housekeeping. This webinar is being recorded. So if you want to share this with a colleague over the next few days, we'll go ahead and send an email to everyone who has signed up with the recording to the webinar. You can connect with us on Twitter with @Cardiolog or @Asif Rehmani. And of course, if you have any questions, we'll leave about 10 minutes or so towards the end of our webinar today for questions. You can send those through the questions box within the GoToWebinar panel. In regards to the agenda for today's webinar, we'll start out with a very short introduction. We'll talk a little bit about Intlock and who we are, and also I'll introduce our guest speaker today. From there, we'll jump into a discussion on why we should care about adoption at all and what's the goal around adoption. We'll talk about the current challenges and true stories to learn from, strategies to overcome the challenges that we'll discuss, and then we'll conclude talking about how we can leverage analytics to help with some of these challenges. And as I mentioned, we'll have some time towards the end for a Q&A, so if you have any questions, again, just send those through the GoToWebinar panel, and we'll get to those towards the end of our session today. So a brief introduction. Intlock has been around for 9, almost 10 years now, since 2005. We're based out of Boston. Over the past almost 10 years, we've been focused on web analytics designed for SharePoint. So a tool that's built specifically for internal platforms, all versions of SharePoint from 03 through 2013, including SharePoint Online. And we can also track third-party tools like Yammer, Citrion, CRM tools, and so forth. Our goal is to help our customers constantly improve SharePoint based on how it's being used. So there are 3 main pillars that we talk to customers about. The first is monitor, which is tracking the usage within SharePoint. The second is engaging users, asking them what are their needs, what are their pain points, what's not working for them. And then finally, the most important pillar is enhance. We want to make sure we're constantly improving SharePoint based on those 2 pillars. So the idea is to be able to have actionable metrics, which will allow us to constantly make SharePoint better for our users. With that, we'll jump right into the good stuff. I want to introduce our guest speaker, Asif Rehmani. He's the CEO of Visual SharePoint, as well as a Microsoft MVP, and also a certified trainer. Asif, thanks so much for taking the time today to join us.
It's my pleasure. Should I go for it?
Yeah, let me go ahead and make you presenter, and we'll jump right into it.
Okay, let me know if you can see my screen.
Yeah, it looks good.
Great. Well, thanks again for having me, Yaron, and the Intlock team. You know, it's a pleasure, and hopefully I can do enough justice to have everybody's time be worth it for being here. So, hi folks, everybody out there. Thanks for joining. Let me get right into it. As Yaron mentioned, this is who I am. I won't bore you with all the details, but honestly, what I really do is mentor and consult and train people in all things SharePoint. Have been doing so since 2002. It's been a pleasure and honor, and I'll hopefully continue to do that. I'm based in Chicago, as it says over here, Chicago, USA. All right. So what I want to do, as I always do, is I'm just going to spend just a second talk about what our company does as well, Visual SP, as Yaron mentioned, and then after that I'll jump into the adoption session. All right. For that, I'm very much of a visual person, as I'm sure many of you are as well, so I'll just show you. This is our site, visualsp.com or SharePoint-videos.com. Either one will get you here. Two things that we do, very simple. First is the help system, that thing right here, and the second one, training center. The SharePoint help system is very much actually in the whole adoption line of things. If you do click on that learn more, you'll see this page right here, and on this page you'll notice the Visual SP help system that we have. This is what it looks like. It's basically a help tab that follows a user around wherever they go, helping them with what they need. In this case, could be video tutorials, could be reference documents, screenshots, or links to other things that could help them. So if there's a need for it in your organization, definitely check it out. It's called the Visual SP Help System. And the second thing, which was this right here, the Training Center, if you did click on this, you would end up at this screen right here. This is all different types of tutorials in SharePoint 2013, Office 365, SharePoint 2010, and even going backwards. If you click on one of them, for example, I'll click on SharePoint 2013, you'll see lots and lots of courses, some from me, many from others that you'll recognize also on branding, project management, workflow, jQuery, JavaScript, all sorts of stuff. So if you get a chance, check it out. Let us know any feedback. With that, let me jump into, of course, the content for the webinar, which is what you came here for. So, SharePoint adoption. Why should we care? I'm going to tell you about something first. It's a story of a beautiful looking intranet that did not help its users, unfortunately. So back in 2006, 2007, I want to say approximately, so this is back in SharePoint 2007 days, right in the beginning, we actually made an intranet for a university out in Michigan, actually, United States. This intranet was beautiful, looked beautiful, acted beautiful, had lots of good stuff in it, but we looked at the search logs of people, what they were looking for. So these would be faculty and students and everything else a couple of months after the intranet was already deployed. And what we found was very disconcerting, which was the top search query. The top search query was not resulting in anything, because that information that people were looking for was not in our intranet. So bear in mind, this was our baby. We'd spent so much time making this for this university, and the top thing was just not there. And we realized that 2 months down the line, very, very bad. Shame on us, unfortunately. But I want to send this to you guys, actually, since we have the Q&A here. What do you think that top query was, the top search that people were doing and not getting any results for? Let me wait a few seconds to see if anybody answers that question. So once again, university, people are looking for something and they're not finding it. Any idea? What do you guys think? So they're looking for Google's. Oh man, this is so funny that 3 people actually got it right. Usually almost nobody gets it right, but that means that you other presentation where I talked about this before. So they were looking for the cafeteria menu or lunch menu. That's right also. So Matthew, Karen, Alyssa, good job. You guys got it. The cafeteria menu was important to these people. It was not important to us who made the actual intranet for these guys. It goes to say that, if it's not important to the people who are coming in to see, the students and faculty, everything else, they won't really care. But if it's important to them and you don't provide it to them, that's a big problem. Anyway, so something to learn from, something as simple as cafeteria menu sent them to the old intranet, which we did not want, and that was a failure on our part, unfortunately. So why is adoption of a technology by information workers, by all of us in this case, so important? Right? That's the question to ask. Well, you don't want this particular thing to happen. You don't want to build a huge airplane, in this case, or our SharePoint deployment, which got lots and lots of seats and amenities that everybody, that you can think of, and then have empty seats. Right? That's what you see over here. Great amenities, great everything, but no one's in the seats. What's the point? I see that personally a lot happening, and it's unfortunate. Deploy SharePoint, it becomes just a dump for files, or just a dump for just some information in just one vertical. Maybe it's just used for search. Maybe it's just used for document repository, but it's not used for as efficiently as it should be. It's a waste of time, waste of effort. Nobody wins. Here's a statistic that we should all keep in mind regarding adoption of any technology. It takes 10 times improvement for any technology to be adopted properly. That's asking quite a bit. But you know what? Without doing this thing, we don't achieve that magic that you want to achieve. So you want to keep this in mind. How do you make this happen? How do you get 10 times the improvement on what you have currently to get the scale that you're looking for in adoption? SharePoint is a do-it-all. You can do anything and everything on top of it. Does not mean that you should, in my humble opinion, that you should do everything and anything on top of it. You want to be careful. You want to hit the quick wins, which I'll talk about a little bit further as well. You want to do the things that make the most sense. And that's what we have learned as a company. That's what I have learned also over the years, that trying to do too much is just a recipe for failure, unfortunately. But you do want to go 10 times the improvement of one thing or 5 things or maybe less of what people are doing. All right. Having said that, let's talk about the current SharePoint and user support and adoption challenges out there. Yeah, and this is not just for SharePoint, it's more in general as well. But of course, we're talking about SharePoint adoption, so let's talk about that. So first of all, let's look at it from the SharePoint support point of view. Now, this could be you, it could be somebody in your organization, or it could be your help desk. So here's what people are saying. Let me also restate, by the way, that all the stuff that I'm talking about right now, all the things that you'll see in this deck is from our experience. Your experience might be a little bit different, and I'm all ears. If you have any feedback in the Q&A right now and the surveys after that you can provide, that would be really helpful. So take all this stuff with a grain of salt. Here's what we have seen. People say, you know what, these users of ours, they ask the same questions again and again and again. So it's like the same thing that I'm answering again and again. How do I upload files? What is the checkout thing? How do I make a new site? Why do I make a new page? Things like that, again and again. And then the support people or the SharePoint guy, infamous SharePoint guy, is asking, you know what, how am I supposed to do my real job and support these users? That's just too, there's just, I can't do that. And SharePoint is not even the only thing that I support. Many times, now this is changing that I've seen the last few years, but many times if you're a server administrator, you're administrating Exchange, SharePoint, maybe even Windows and stuff like that. If you're a developer, same thing, you're doing development for SharePoint, you're doing development for some other systems as well, SAP maybe and things like that. Or if you are a program manager or business analyst support, you're also supporting multiple systems. So how are you supposed to do all that stuff? We hear this quite a bit. How am I supposed to do all that stuff when SharePoint itself is so huge? And lastly, but definitely not the least, people keep going back to the old way of doing things. So let me tell you something on this thing, and I hope you agree on this as well. If you have the old intranet, let's say this is the old intranet, and then you make the new intranet, and let me go back here. That's the old intranet right here, right? If some information like the cafeteria menu that we just talked about before exists, it exists, let's use a different color here, and it does not exist here, you know what people are going to go to, right? They're going to go back to the old intranet. Even if it does exist in the new green box over here, they're still going to go the old way because that's where people, that's how we're all wired. It's familiarity. I've been using this for years. Why should I go to this new thing? Unless it gives me a huge improvement over the existing systems. So one thing that we tell people right away is, you don't want to have the old ways. You don't want to have them turned on. Because if it's there, they're going to go there. So that's one complaint that we hear a lot. People go to the old ways. So right in the beginning of this presentation, I actually have the quick solution for you for end user adoption. You guys ready? It's going to be a one-slide solution to all of your problems. So here we go. I'll give you a few seconds to read this. All right, so I'm sure some of you are chuckling out there. Your users are the one that is affected. It's not you, it's not me, it's the users, right? Just change the users, and we're all good. But let's just say that that's not the option. You can't change your users. Let's continue with other strategies, shall we? All right. So if we have the same users, what do they want? What is the point of view of these users who are using SharePoint? Well, this is a pretty common thing that you and I also talk about. Well, if something is working, why change it? Does it make sense to change it if it's working? I don't think it does. I don't want to learn a new technology, software. That's also true. If you're already doing something that's working, why do I have to learn something new? Yeah, unless, once again, there's a huge benefit to it, to me. So all in all, everybody, including the technology practitioners and all, everybody is saying the same exact thing. What's in it for me? Why should I care? Why do I need to do this thing if there's no upside or there's not enough upside for me? So we're going to talk about is some proven strategies from the field, some things that you can put into production, some things you can put into your methodology, hopefully, and these will give you some edge over trying to get adoption in SharePoint, because at the end of the day, if you've spent millions and made it look beautiful just like we did for that university, and if there's no adoption, if there's not enough adoption, then there's no point. I've personally seen, unfortunately, dozens and dozens of instances of that happening, and I really, really hope that that stops happening, or at least it lessens. So what I'm about to present to you are some, I don't want to call it a silver bullet, because I don't think a silver bullet for this exists, but maybe they're just a bunch of copper bullets. Let's look at it that way. That the copper bullets that will help you if you take all of them to get further adoption. All right, so here are my components. Number one, getting executive support. Number two, end user training and support, obviously. Number three, empowering the help desk. Number four, building no-code solutions and also no-code developers. You might say, well, what does that have to do with adoption? I'll let you know. And number five, keeping things fresh. Some of them, or maybe all of them, you've heard of and related to adoption, but there will be a few things that might shock you when I talk about them, because I don't talk about the traditional strategies with some of these things. There are some things, of course, that you do and it makes sense. Okay, there's only one way of doing it, but then there are other times when there are other ways of doing things as well, which people don't realize, which help quite a bit. So let's get into it. Sounds good? Alrighty. Executive sponsorship. Now, this is a very, very common phenomenon. We all look up to mentors and leaders and folks who inspire us. All right, I have many of them myself as well. I'm sure you do as well. And you automatically, sometimes not even knowingly, mimic the behavior of that person or those people. So top-down support is a must, definitely. In fact, I even threw this in there that otherwise you might as well call it quits. I've had a person actually recently who herself extremely motivated, another SharePoint MVP as well in the community. She was there with the company. I don't want to mention the company. It's a technology-based retail company. Anyway, they're all over the place. You guys know this company really well. She had to actually quit that company and go to a different one, even though she's amazing what she did, and her team was amazing at this company. She had to go to a different company just because she could not get the executive support from this company. So they lost out on this great resource. They lost out on other resources that she took with her just because there was no top-down support and she could not make it happen. They just were not bought into it. So without this, it just doesn't work. I've never, ever seen it work. Employees do model the behavior of the leader. If the leader or the leaders of the company say, you know what, yeah, we have the SharePoint thing and it kind of sucks, well, you know what's going to happen? That's what everybody else is going to say as well. So please be careful. You have to get this right. You have to make the leaders realize also that, listen, we've already invested in it, or we are investing in it right now, and here's the bottom line. Here are the other, and I can provide you some of the samples of where it has worked, and it has worked really well. So if they have the proof, they know the dollar figures, it just makes sense to go full force with it and not just half support. Anyway, so what can an executive do to show support? What can they actually do concretely to say, yes, I support it? Here's a few things to keep in mind. Yeah? Executive support in action. Public proclamation of support and vision. You know, saying it out loud, yes, we do support it. Saying it in newsletters, saying it in a public forum, saying it in a meeting really helps quite a bit. Having an active blog. I don't know if you know this person over here, Jeff Immelt, CEO of GE, at least used to be. Very, very publicly had the blog, an active blog inside the company based on SharePoint. Okay, made a pretty big statement saying that yes, I support this initiative, I support this product, and then people came, they put a lot of comments on the blogs. It really, really helped getting them into the platform. And then of course, once you come to one portion of it, which is blogs, you go and check out other things as well that you have not seen before. Always happens. This is a hard one, but it does work. Having executives refuse to accept emails with too many attachments or large attachments or messages with too many people, because there's a better way, and the better way, of course, is to do it with SharePoint, to do it with team sites. So some people resisted saying that, hey, you know what, we can't really blanket this thing all over the place. It's just not going to work. That's fine. You don't have to start doing it with all executives with every day. But you know what? Maybe one executive to take one day of the week and say, you know what? no large attachment Tuesdays. So on Tuesdays, we won't be doing this. And then after that, growing it more and more to other days as well, and to other executives as well. It has to become a culture change. Until it becomes a culture change, things don't work. So doing things like this, having them sent to the right portal, which is the SharePoint portal for this kind of stuff, makes sense. Also having an executive answer a question of the week on the front page of the portal. Now the front page could be any specific front page. It could be the departmental one, it could be the company one, some place where you want people to go to, because they'll be looking at that one question and then going to be looking at everything else around it, saying, yeah, this makes sense as well. So check it out. Hopefully this helps. All right. Jumping on to the next thing, since we have a short amount of time here, I'm actually going a little bit quicker than usual. I do have a 60-minute presentation on this kind of stuff as well, but this time we're going to go a little bit fast. End user training and support. Just because you build it, they might not come. You know, I mean, it's unfortunately that's true for SharePoint. You need to do some extra. It's not automatic. Empathy is a must. Not just sympathy, but empathy. Putting yourself in somebody else's shoes, in an end user's shoes, really, really helps. Understanding why should they care, what's in it for them, understanding it before being understood. I'll give you an example, right? Here's an example of something that I've seen. You're looking at the screen right there, right? This is a SharePoint 2013 screen. If you are in SharePoint 2010, your screen looks a little bit different, but similar. If you tell a user, here's your library, right? And I want you to add a new document to this library, take it from the file share and add it. You know what they're going to do? Here's what they're going to do. They're going to click on this new document right there. Or they're going to click on this new document right there. And many of you who have done this before know exactly what it does. When you click on this new document, it actually makes a new document. So a new document from scratch. And which makes sense, of course, if you look at it here, but it's not the document that I already have. I want to take that document and throw it here. I want to put it here. So obviously looking at this, it's not new document, it's upload document. Okay, yeah, it makes sense. But these small things here and there will trip the user when they're doing it the first time, and the more things they do that frustrates them because they don't have the help that they need when they need it, the more they will resist going to this new platform. So seemingly simple things, as it says, might not be simple to them. We need to understand that. Excuse me. All right. What users expect when they come across something they don't understand in SharePoint? So here's what happens. Here's another sample. A document in a document library is checked out, right? The person wants to edit this document. They're looking at this document. and this document has an arrow pointing out of it and it says it's checked out. What do? Well, first they look around onto the page and say, what does this mean? I don't know what checked out means. Can I find some information on this page? Is there any help on this page that I can find? If they don't find that, then they ask somebody nearby, hey, Julie, do you know what this means? I have no idea what this means. What do I do? Or they Google it. They Bing it. They usually don't even get to the third step, but I'm putting down anyway for motivated users. They might get to that, or they might call the help desk. Some people said, no, they're calling me right away. This is like the first thing that they do. It's number one. Well, depending on the user, that's true sometimes. They're calling you or they're emailing you. Or then just give up and say, no, I don't know. This thing kind of sucks. I'm just going to ask somebody else to do it. We don't want them to go this route, right? We want them to have the help when they need it. So the sequence of training end users, let's communicate the business goals. This is hard to do because we're talking about weeks or months in advance of the new initiative, having them understand that a new initiative is coming. Okay, I was with a company who actually did posters all around the company before a new intranet was released weeks in advance, and the posters had really exciting stuff on there, not boring, but really exciting stuff, telling people, hey, here's what's coming, and here's how it affects your role. Each individually communicating to people, to departments, to individuals, here's how it changes your role, hopefully for the better. And then doing the training on the actual software, the technology in this case. Usually, I hate to say it, but unfortunately, number 3 comes first many times. We don't want that, of course, but that happens quite a lot. You want them to understand why and who, what, and then tell them how. The how should be later. The click here to do this is not the first thing. The why is the first thing. I know it's easier said than done, but honestly, I've done personally this thing many times, and I've failed many times because this was the first thing that we did, because that's what the company requested. Without having people understand number 1 and 2, it's very difficult to execute number 3. All right, some costs I threw in there. So when we talk about a 2-day training of end user training, a thorough training, the costs really add up. That's not the right way of doing it, in my humble opinion. You can't just open people's head and pour information in there and have it stay. It just doesn't work. Coming from like I said, I've been a trainer for many years now. At least that has never worked for me, just to do that for the end users. Yes, for power users, for developers, for administrators who I've trained as well, it's different. For end users, you're talking about paralegals, you're talking about secretaries, you're talking about people in medical field and legal field and everything else. They're concerned with their job, not with SharePoint. One thing that I always say is that these are not SharePoint end users. They are users who happen to be using SharePoint, just like users who happen to be using Office. So we need to treat them as professionals and have them have the help they need when they need it. So here's a bold statement about all this thing that I want to state. A thorough end user training on SharePoint is a waste of time. It's a waste of time for them. It's a waste of time for you, I feel. Instead, other strategies. Here's, by the way, all what happens when you try to do a thorough training. Only 10% of what they read stays with them, 20% of what they hear stays with them, and 30% of what they see. Now, if you are able to do hands-on training, which takes a lot longer time, yes, the retention is much higher, but hands-on training is also much harder to do for end users. Instead, here's some ideas. Kickoff training, intro training, right? Frequent awareness sessions and lunch and learns. Now, I have an idea for this one that has worked nicely before, and I'll give that to you also. Lunch and learns, not just coming from the SharePoint guru, not coming only from you if you are the SharePoint guru, but also coming from their peer. So having a peer, having an evangelist in a department stand up or sit down, but in the actual lunch and learn, they are the ones who promote and tell about their passion or something that they found or something that has helped them with their job. It helps a lot more than a SharePoint person saying it, if it's one of their peers saying it. Also, providing on-demand and quick help. Now, of course, this is very near and dear to my heart, specifically because this is how we developed our own product, the Visual SP Help System. People kept on saying, you know what, we need people, our folks, to have the help they need when they need it, because they're just not going to the wiki page, or they're not going to the training portal or the knowledge portal that we put together. There's some really awesome knowledge portals that Microsoft has made, including the Productivity Hub, for many, many years. The problem has always been getting the folks there. They don't go there. We're talking about the real typical end users, right? They need the information right where they are, when they need it. And that's where the reference documents, tutorials, tip sheets, something on their desk or something in the screen really, really helps. Now, after that, of course, having a reference portal still is a good thing. Don't get me wrong. It's just that that's going to be for folks who really want to dig in further, and that's not the majority. Trust me, that is not the majority. Even though you are excited about it, I'm excited about it, doesn't mean that a typical end user is excited about digging in further. But having a knowledge portal is definitely a good thing. All right, implementing quick wins. So identifying true pain points and focusing in on them, extremely important. That's the way to do it. It sounds easy, but it's not. I won't have time to go into the exact story that I wanted to talk about because there's just not enough time. But here's a link if you would like. I believe this PowerPoint is going to be also made public and made available to you. So if you go in there, you'll read about one of my experiences with secretary in Tennessee that we tried to help, and it completely backfired. I don't know about you, but I learned a lot from stories myself, and stories like these which have happened will hopefully guide you as to understand what things you should put your energies in and what things you should be cognizant of and be careful about. So check it out. All right. Building powerful solutions, easy to maintain no-code solutions. I believe this is a big, big thing to getting people also to adopt SharePoint. The reason, first of all, of going no-code instead of code solutions is because the possibilities of what you can do are enormous. It's a quick learning curve, very, very quick learning curve for especially the power users to make things happen. Easier ongoing management of solution for you, or even for the power users or evangelists in your organization, and also you can delegate their responsibilities. Once again, let me make this clear. We're not talking about end users specifically here, delegating the responsibility to them. We're talking about delegating a responsibility to a power user or evangelist. If you built a solution or if they built a solution, giving it to them and they can manage the solution for their end users. The reason I feel very strongly that no-code solutions help with adoption is the following. Imagine you built a solution and gave it to somebody, as opposed to they built a solution or one of their peers, a power user, built a solution and then they're using it. Honestly, when somebody in the department is empowered to make something, they will be the ones who are going to be telling and teaching other people as to here's how you use it, here's why it's important to you, and they can also manage that solution. So instead of doing everything centrally, it could be delegated to folks within departments and say, oh, you know what, you can make this, Jill, and you can make this based on Excel services, for example, and here's how. You can make a dashboard here, you can make some tables here, you can make some pivot table, and here's your solution. So a lot of good stuff you could do with making no-code solutions, and what I have in this deck are some of the possibilities. So I'll talk about that quickly here. Many, many different types of solutions you can make: inventory tracking, vendor management, vacation scheduling, etc. And I have some visuals for you as well. Many people respond to visuals better, so I've put those in my slide deck. This is one of the data view based solutions that was built in SharePoint Designer, using SharePoint Designer 2010, manipulating data, using for lists and libraries and stuff like that, conditional formatting, etc. SharePoint Designer workflows, this is in 2013. They have come a long way, so you can automate your solutions very easily using SharePoint Designer 2013. A lot of good stuff you can do with stages and looping and calling web services, etc. No code required whatsoever. Making really powerful no-code apps using Access. Access is making a comeback in a big way, and you can use that right away to launch your application, your new application, directly to the web. A lot of good stuff you could do there. Having self-service search-based solutions. So a person goes to a page, they see automatically information that they need to see regarding, for example, in this case, the fictional Contoso Corporation. And then they have a capability right here to refine their solution further based on author, result type, modified date. No code required. A lot of good stuff you could do. Powerful no-code forms, right? Making no-code forms. Infopath is still alive. You know, it's not dead. So you can use Infopath. You can use other tools as well to make the forms, and they go a long way into getting your users to use it, understand what they need, change it. If a team member needs to change it, they can do that as well. Here's a solution for onboarding forms that I have listed here too. And also dashboards. There's many different ways of making dashboards, once again, without code, using Excel or using Power View, things like that in here. This is Power View. This is using Dashboard Designer, which is in Performance Point, if you have Performance Point. And also with SQL Server Power Pivot. Many different ways to visualize the solution, to visualize the data. And people really respond to that stuff. You know, and then you can change these things as business changes, as acquisitions or mergers happen, or as your department gets reorged. Things can be changed very quickly instead of waiting for a traditional development cycle. Project management, a big thing, of course. You can use Project 2013 and or Project Server in addition to SharePoint and build some really awesome project management solutions. And lastly, but definitely not least, using geolocation column, which is already built into SharePoint, to have mapping directly in your libraries and your lists. That also helps users quite a bit, understanding where the offices are, for example, or where the resellers exist, or anything that you want to map out, you can do directly with there. And it's all there. It's all baked into SharePoint, no code required. You can check out some of our videos if you like, because some of these things are already documented there as well. You'll find a lot of stuff on YouTube. You'll find a lot of stuff outside as well that you can see. And get an Office 365 trial. You know, try some of these things out. You'll definitely be surprised as to how much good stuff you could do. All right, empowering the help desk. So I got a couple more things, and I'll hand it back to Yaren. Empowering the help desk is very important because when somebody calls the help desk, they expect help. And if the help desk doesn't know what they're talking about, that's a big problem. Formal training for the help desk. Now, some people tell me at this point saying, hey, wait a minute, we don't have a help desk. We only have me. I'm the help desk for SharePoint. I'm the guy for SharePoint. Well, take it whichever way you want. If it's a formal help desk, those people or you, these folks need formal training. You need formal training on power use technologies and no-code technologies because you need to understand what's possible when a user comes to you and says, you know what, I want to visualize the solution, I want to do this thing, I want to do that, what are my choices? You'll need to know what the choices are, even if you don't know in depth how to make it, you'll need to know at least what exists and what not to do. There are some bad practices in SharePoint also, believe it or not, that will take you down the wrong path. Having a knowledge base for yourself or for the help desk, having wiki pages and documentation, tutorials, all these things, online resources, all really helps. If it is a formal help desk, then having that formal help desk be teamed up with some evangelists within each department, that also helps to make connections the proper way. And also remote consultation. So how having the remote consultation directly with experts from this help team is also very helpful. All right, last thing, keeping it fresh. Very important to have an understanding for everybody that, you know what, we need to change, our culture needs to change to make this successful. It's not just the technology, it's a culture change. Having owner info of each page on SharePoint directly on the page provides comfort, provides help quite a bit to people. So if you could do that, that's very helpful. Doing some food-related events like SharePoint Overfest, collaboration at Halloween, SharePoint giving for Thanksgiving, or here's another name for Lunch and Learn that works pretty nicely, 30 for 30. Give us 30 minutes, we'll teach you 30 things. You know, keeping things fresh and making it reviving again and again really helps. Having events such as, hey, this is our old intranet. Here's going to be our new intranet. It's coming in September 2017. Very helpful to just make some excitement into the company. And my last slide, having some useful widgets on the home page, extremely helpful. Having weather, having traffic, having quotes of the day, things that are very, very small and easy to do. You can build it, or you can buy these things from many vendors out there, and you can just post it on. When a user is leaving from their office, they see on their portal homepage, what's my weather for the commute that I'm about to make, what's my traffic, and maybe some other inspirational stuff like that. And it really helps them make this portal their own and keep coming back to it. So keep it fresh, get executive sponsorship, help the help desk, help the users, build no-code solutions, do all these things, and hopefully this will help you with your adoption initiatives. We're here as well. Once again, my name is Asif Rehmani, so if you would like to reach out, as Yaron mentioned, through Twitter or something else, we can also help with some other strategies. But wishing you best of luck on your SharePoint initiatives, and thanks very much.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Asif. This was incredibly helpful, and I think lots of good pieces can be taken out of your presentation.
Thank you, Aaron.
I'll go ahead and go over the last topic for this morning, and we'll talk about how several of the items that Asif was discussing, how we can tie them into analytics, and how analytics can really help out when trying to do things like measure adoption. Of course, I see there are a few questions so far, but if there are any more, feel free to send them over in the GoToWebinar box, and we'll bring Asif back in a few moments to go over those questions as well. So first of all, why do we even need analytics when talking about SharePoint? And the key here is really that you can only manage what you can measure. So the only way you can really know what's going on in SharePoint, define if our launch was successful at all, measure if people are using it and adoption is increasing, is being able to measure what's going on. And that's really the end goal that we help our customers with. How can we measure the new deployment, analyze it, and then help customers improve their environments based on what's actually going on? If we break this down a little more into some subcategories, we're going to talk about specifically tracking adoption with analytics. So over the course of different weeks and months, if people are using SharePoint more, different departments and so forth, we can actually show management that adoption is increasing, that the training we're providing, for example, is beneficial and helping our users leverage SharePoint. Through analytics, we can measure improvement in productivity. So a great example is through search. If we find out that everyone is searching for the same content, let's put a link on the home page, save everyone those 30 seconds each day that they're searching for that same popular content. Collaboration, a huge goal these days for SharePoint, helping different teams and employees collaborate. Of course, today's offices span across different states, countries, and time zones. So the ability to show that there is collaboration and that people are really leveraging the tools for collaborating. And then finally, engagement. There's lots of new social features within SharePoint, everything from communities, beyond just viewing content, liking content, sharing content, rating content, and so forth. And so we want to make sure that people are leveraging the ability to use communities. If they're communities with lower engagement levels, we can pinpoint them with the analytics and then offer them very targeted training, because we know those communities aren't leveraging SharePoint as often. So that's why we need analytics when talking about SharePoint. And I want to break this down quickly into three areas. One is content analytics. And there's a big shift we're seeing here talking about adoption from just page views to more social metrics. So besides what's been viewed very often, we're going to see what content is most influential and then make that content easier for users to find and make that content through links on the home page. And we define influential content by things such as comments, what content has the most likes and highest ratings. Next, we'll jump into users, of course, a key in adoption, as opposed to just seeing what users are viewing today and and how many users are viewing content. We're going to focus our analytics around how they're interacting with each other. So as opposed to just seeing how many unique users we have, we're going to try and analyze who are the most influential users within our organization and see if we can push more people to become influencers within our organization. And also, once we know who are the top influencers or evangelists, we can hand over to them more power, like Asif mentioned. We can bring them to do those talks during lunches and so forth. But we have to know who those users are, and we'll find that out by seeing how many followers specific individuals have, how much they're contributing through posts and comments, and things of that sort. And the third main area when talking about adoption is going to be around community analytics. So again, a shift from the basic usage that was popular a few years ago, which is just page view, to the actual engagement within those communities. And here we talk about things such as active discussions within communities. Are there questions that are being answered or questions that are unanswered for weeks and things of that sort? And then once we know which communities are less active, again, we can pinpoint with more support, more training to improve those communities' adoption rate. From here, I'll quickly show a brief example of some of these metrics, and then we'll conclude in just a few moments with some Q&A. So this is an example for an analytics dashboard. On the left-hand side, you can see the entire hierarchy within SharePoint. So here we're tracking a 2010 farm, 2013 farm, and also a SharePoint Online tenant. And that is, we can simply select any object here, the entire farm, a site, a page, and so forth, to get these instant dashboards showing us data that we just talked about. So things like most popular content or the top search phrases, what people cannot find, for example. From here, we can also integrate with Microsoft's Power BI. So a really great interface and a great way to analyze all this data. Really makes it easy to consume and use. So I have this dashboard with lots of different widgets. There are two really neat things that I want to show you here. If we click on one of these widgets, for example, this page views by country and browse, you can see here at the center right-hand side. It'll take us to this slide. It looks a lot like PowerPoint. And here, these three widgets that you see here are all connected. So if I want to see data, for example, just for the month of March, I click that here, and you'll see in the other areas, the other widgets are going to change and show me just data for the month of March. Very similar, if I want to see just data for the US, we can click there, and then the other metrics have changed as well. More than that, Power BI has this amazing Ask a Question box, where here, instead of creating new dashboards and new reports, we can simply type in whatever we want to find out. For example, so pages by browser, and then right away, in a very ad hoc way, we receive an instant metric showing us what browser people are using. So if they shouldn't be using Firefox, for example, we can see that that's our third browser right here, and over 2,196 pages were made using Firefox. That's just a quick example for some of the metrics that can be provided here. But as we have about 10 minutes till the end of our time today, let's go ahead and take a look at some of the questions. And if you didn't have time to send over your questions, feel free to type those in now in the GoToWebinar panel. All right, Asif. So just looking at a few of the questions here. The first one from Kathy. So a few of these are a little bit general, but perhaps you have some insights on these as well. So Kathy's always looking for the next big thing in SharePoint. She says that they've utilized InfoPath quite extensively. What other features and values or functions do you think would be some of the key things that Kathy should take note to?
Yeah, so I think Kathy specifically is mentioning InfoPath, but looking for anything here, it seems like. For SharePoint 2016, which is the next version of it, I can't speak to some of the stuff that's still under NDA, but look for the workflows and forms functionality to hopefully get stronger in the months and years to come. The stuff that we care about, of course, is user processes, and those things Microsoft is investing in. Having said that, Office 365 will still remain to be the place for things like Delve and Office groups now and things like that, all to come there. And eventually, some of them, if not all of them, are going to make their way into the on-prem. But Office 365 is where you want to get a tenant if you don't already have it, just a trial one, and you'll see lots of awesome features there of what's coming.
All right, perfect. Next question from Laura, asking about any suggestions and tips for virtual organizations who don't meet often. So of course there's the new Skype for Business, but also if you have any other suggestions there or experience around that.
Yeah, you took my word. That's exactly what I was going to say, Yaron. That Skype for Business, which for folks who don't know, it's Link. Microsoft Link has been renamed to Skype for Business, is the thing to use. Honestly, there's many choices, of course, in the world. I can't say that Skype for Business is the only tool that you want to explore. I think you should go look beyond that as well. So there's WebEx, there's GoToWebinars and stuff like that. We're using GoToWebinar right now. Many of these tools have their own pros and cons. You might have an automatic free license with the core licensing for Skype for Business, so there's definitely some economic reason to use that. Otherwise, there's other tools as well. But yeah, virtual organizations are very common. Ours is a virtual organization as well, and these kind of tools are extremely helpful in that.
All right, perfect. Next, from Randy, why is the double booking feature found in SharePoint 2010 Calendar removed from 2013?
Well, there are things such as meeting sites, such as this one, such as the chart web part. Have been and will continue to be things that will be removed and not just added. Microsoft is looking at the analytics. As Yaron is talking about, analytics are extremely important, and they're looking at the analytics for being the biggest tenant of SharePoint in the world right now, because Office 365 is lots of tenancies, of course, right? So they are the the landlord, basically, of all these different tenants that are out there, and they're looking at all these usage, and whatever doesn't have amazing usage, not just good but amazing usage, they're kind of taking out and seeing people complain about the stuff. So anyway, that's my guess right now, that it was just not being used as much. That's just what it is, it's a guess.
All right, perfect. So I see all the questions we have thus far. Again, Asif, I want to thank you so much for taking the time today. Very powerful presentation with some great insight. Thank you so much for joining us today.
It's been my pleasure. I hope everybody got something out of it. If you did not, you can throw virtual tomatoes at me by sending me some comments and feedbacks and some questions. Otherwise, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, you can reach Asif at visualsp.com. I'm sure he'll be happy to take any questions you might have after the webinar, and you can reach us at intlock.com if you have any questions, comments. And again, we'll be sending out this recording in the next day.